everyone, I'm Claire, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing some polishes from the brand Geeky Bees, which I feel like is harder to say than it should be. This is my first time trying Geeky Bees, which is an indie nail polish brand based in Colorado, and just to be transparent, I didn't purchase these polishes myself. I won them in a giveaway that Ashley/Polished Mess did over on Instagram, I think to celebrate making a certain number of posts. I'm not sure if I have to disclose that since it's not PR and I don't have any relationship with the brand. Ashley is the one who mailed me the polishes, but just to be upfront about it, I did get this polish for free, but that won't affect how I review it. So yeah, I have 4 polishes to show you today that are apparently some of Ashley's favorites from the brand, so they're all from different collections. We've got a couple glitter crellies, a flaky, a multichrome. I'll be showing my swatches and talking about how I feel about the polishes, as well as my general first impression of the brand, and if I plan to add them to the list of brands that I buy from. So let's get into it. I'm gonna go in the order that I swatched these. So first up is Miracle Romance, which seems to be from a collection called Kawaii Classic Magical Girls, and it's described as a white crelly with a golden sparkle and various small pink and blue glitters. And I did not have an easy time with application for this one, which I was a little worried about going in because in some of the swatch photos it looks like they didn't get totally even coverage. I feel like the main issue I was having was the brush. All the other polishes in my collection have the wide flat style brush with the rounded tip, which fans out nicely as you paint with it and kind of fits into the curve of the cuticle. And this polish has what I think some people call the broomstick brush, which is narrower and thicker and has a straight tip. And it's not necessarily a bad brush, but I'm just not used to it. So on my first coat, I had to dip back into the bottle because I felt like I didn't have enough polish on my brush, but then I think I ended up with too much. And with this type of brush, it just felt like I couldn't control where it was going as much as usual. And to the polish's credit, it did even out somewhat as it dried. It looked very smooth by the time I went in with my next coat, but it also kind of pooled, so it was thicker around the edges of my nail and thin in the middle. And I was able to even it out somewhat with the second and third coats, but there was still a thicker spot near my cuticle. And some of that is on me not being used to the brush, which led to overworking it a bit. But I think it also has to do with the formula being a little thick, which is keeping it from fully self-leveling, and it also meant that it didn't look even as I was painting, so I would do more brush strokes to try to even it out, but that ultimately didn't help. But at least I'll know how to do a better job with it next time. And overall, it's still a nice polish. For a white polish, coverage is pretty good in 3 coats. I wasn't really seeing visible nail line in most lighting, and I think it's a cute glitter mix, though I might prefer if the glitters were a bit bigger, just so you could see them better. But the dainty look is nice too, and you do see the glitter more than the golden sparkle. That aspect is more subtle, but still visible, at least in person. I don't wear a lot of white polish, at least not as a full mani. I don't mind it as an accent, like what I'm wearing now, but for some reason I think it looks weird when all my nails are white. So I can see myself using this as an accent polish, especially during Pride Month since it's the trans flag colors. Next up is Flickering Colors from the Evil Disco collection, and it's a black polish with scattered hollow and pink and purple iridescent flakes that shift to blue and green. I had an easier time with the application for this one, partially because I knew what to expect with the brush, and partially because the formula wasn't as thick, so doing a lot of brush strokes wasn't as much of an issue. The description calls this a crelly polish, but I would honestly call it a jelly. It was pretty sheer on the first coat and continued to be somewhat sheer on the second. But it built up enough by the third coat that I was happy with coverage, and coverage was pretty even. I didn't have the same issues as I did with Miracle Romance. And I do like this polish. I'm much more likely to wear a black polish. I enjoy dark colors. I like the flaky color, and I enjoy how much hollow they added to it. I'm used to just a little dusting of hollow being added as an accent to this type of polish, but I would say the hollow is a feature in Flickering Colors as much as the flakies are. My only issue is that this polish isn't quite as bold as I want it to be. The flakes don't stand out very much. In a lot of polishes with iridescent elements, they look alright in bright direct light, but you can actually see the flakes or shimmer even better in the shade and they look really glowy. But with this polish, you really need bright light to be able to see the flakes well because in lower lighting they get a little lost in the base. So I think this polish is great for people who want a black polish with a little something extra going on, but I would personally enjoy it a bit more if those flakes were a little bigger and bolder, so I could get a better view of the fun colors. I will still wear it though, like I could technically probably get a similar look with a black cream and a couple toppers, but it's convenient to have it all in one bottle. Then we've got what I think is the most fun polish, Amphibian Friend from the Plus Ultra collection. It has what's described as a froggy Kelly green leaning base with small yellow and black glitters plus a little pink shimmer. And I had a pretty good time with application for this one. It wasn't too thick and it spread out pretty evenly across the nail. I would say that with the second coat, coverage was almost even enough that you could just wear it like that if you don't mind a little visible nail line. But I did need the third coat for it to totally even out, and I was happy with coverage at that point. I couldn't see my nail line in most lighting. And like I said, I think this is a really fun polish. I don't always go for bright greens like this. I like my swampy olive greens, but it's a nice color that I'm happy to wear. And even though the glitters are small, there's a lot of them and they contrast with the base color enough that you can see them pretty well. Plus, I feel like the color combo works for the polish name and inspiration. I'm certainly not a frog expert, but I googled green frog with black and yellow spots, and there seem to be multiple kinds of frogs and probably other amphibians too that have this color scheme, so that's fun. I will say, similar to the first polish I showed, the added shimmer is pretty subtle. I could see it in person if I looked for it, but it's not showing up very well on camera. And again, there's nothing wrong with being subtle, and I think the shimmer is probably helping bring more dimension to the polish, even if it's not super noticeable. But I personally would enjoy having that element be a little more visible. Still a good polish though. And last up we have Anti-Magic, which according to the label on the bottle is from the Grimoire collection. And it's the only one of these polishes that doesn't seem to be currently listed on the website, or at least I can't find it. So I don't have an official description for it, but it seems to be a standard black to red multichrome. Specifically the kind that's a true dark black and not the kind with a purple undertone. So I think that means it's more like ILNP's Eclipse and less like Holo Taco's Dead Serious, though I don't actually own either of those, so I can't say for sure. And I was pretty impressed by the application and the coverage on this one. I don't have a ton of multichromes, but they tend to be on the thin and sheer side in the first coat, but this one was very pigmented. That also meant it had kind of a thicker formula, but I still found it very smooth and self-leveling and easy to work with, and it didn't show brushstrokes as much as some multichromes. It probably helped that this bottle actually had the kind of wide flat brush that I'm used to. Not sure why it's different, but I think that did help with application because I had arguably too much polish on the brush for my second coat, but it still went on very smoothly and didn't end up being a problem. And because I did kind of thick coats, I was able to stop at 2 and it was fully opaque. Like, I couldn't see through the polish at all, even if I was holding my nail up to the light. I think even with thinner coats, it's pigmented enough to be opaque in 2, but of course I can't say for sure. So I'm very happy with this polish. I have some polishes that have a black to red multichrome base plus other elements, but this is my first plain black to red multichrome, and I think it's a great one to have. I would totally recommend it if it were currently available on the website, since Geeky Bees polishes are priced lower than some other indie and boutique brands, so it's a good value. But if they ever bring it back, or you come across it in a D-stash and you're looking for a black to red multichrome, it's a good one to get. So yeah, those are all the polishes, and overall I had a pretty good experience with them, aside from my issues with the brush. And it was just fun to try a new brand, since that's not something I do very often. There are so many indie brands that it's hard to keep up with them all, so I enjoyed having a reason to look around their website and see what else they've made. But you might be wondering, are they going to be my 5th brand? If you don't know, I only buy nail polish from 4 brands because that's my way of keeping my collection to a manageable size and not spending too much. And in my last video, which was a Q&A, I talked about the possibility of adding a 5th brand in the future when there's more room in my budget, and which brand it might be. And obviously Geeky Bees is now a 5th brand in my collection, but will I be buying from them going forward? And the answer is not necessarily. There are some things I like about them. One is the price. Their polishes are $11 for 15 milliliters when a lot of indie brands are like $14 for that amount, and boutique brands are more expensive for less polish, so the price is a plus. I also appreciate that they seem to keep some polishes around for a while. I can tell because some of the swatch photos are from Nicole Loves Nails like 2 nail shapes ago. It's been a while since her nails have looked like this. I'm not sure if they keep all their polishes around that long, but I know that for some indies, most things are kind of limited, which leads to more FOMO, so it's nice to see a brand that at least keeps some things available for longer. And I enjoyed reading the little about section on the website. They describe their polishes as fan art in a bottle or pop culture polishes. Their collections tend to be a reference to something, but they emphasize that they're also just trying to make nice polishes that you can enjoy even if you aren't familiar with whatever they're inspired by. And as someone who doesn't really know the references for most of the stuff on the website, I appreciate that I can still feel included. So definitely some positives, but at the same time, my experience trying the 4 polishes was good but not amazing. I've mentioned the brush. I can work with the broomstick brush, but it's not my preference. The bottles were also really hard to open. I had to ask my partner to help me, which is not something I usually have to do. I think it was a combination of the caps being a very smooth plastic, so they were hard to grip, and they also just seemed to be over-tightened. And of course, that's better than them being too loose because you don't want them to leak during shipping, but it's not ideal when you sit down to swatch a polish and have to spend extra time getting it open. Not a huge deal, but still part of my experience that I think is worth mentioning. And then there's the polishes themselves. They were all nice polishes and had pretty good formulas, but something that came up a few times was different elements being kind of subtle. And it's not a case of I was expecting a bold shimmer based on the photos, but it's really faint in person. The polishes look the same on me as they do in the swatches on the website. It just seems to be the style of polishes that Geeky Bees does. There are exceptions, but they seem to lean more towards subtle shimmers or very small glitters based on the polishes I got and a lot of what I saw on the website. And there's nothing wrong with that, it's just not my preference. I like to be able to see the different elements in the polish I'm wearing without having optimal lighting or holding my nails up to my face. So I think going forward, if Geeky Bees puts out a polish I really love, I will let myself get it. They're already in my collection, so I don't mind adding a couple more here and there, but I'm also not planning to buy any of what's currently on the website or to try and keep up with all their releases like I do with my 4 brands. So maybe they're kind of unofficially my 5th brand, but I'm mostly planning to just enjoy the 4 polishes I have from them, and I may or may not add more in the future. But yeah, I think that's all I have for you today. Thanks again to Polished Mess for sending me these polishes, and thank you to everyone who's watching till the end. Let me know in the comments if you've tried Geeky Bees or if you have a favorite polish from the ones I showed. And if you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you would leave me a like or maybe even subscribe. Hyping videos is apparently also something you can do now. You could also follow me on Instagram, linked below. But thank you to everyone who has done any of that, and I'll see you next time. Bye!